June. The sun over the village square was scorching, blazing like a ball of fire. Next to me, my dad puffed on his dry tobacco pipe, the sharp, choking smell mixing with the earthy scent and the noisy chatter in the square, all of it rushing straight into my nose. This wasn't a dream. I had truly returned to the day the city youths were being assigned housing. I remembered it clearly. It had rained for several days in a row, and the old mud houses at the youth camp couldn't hold up. One wall collapsed, and even the roof had a giant hole in it. The village head was so anxious he kept rubbing his hands together. In the end, it was decided the city youths would temporarily scatter. Any household with an extra room would take someone in. My dad, being the village party secretary, naturally had to take the lead. He had been waiting in the square since early morning to help with the arrangements. In the center of the square stood 10 city youths, their eyes filled with uncertainty as they glanced at the surrounding villagers. The quick-witted ones had already started quietly chatting with familiar locals, trying to arrange a good place to stay. The more shy and rigid ones stood still, waiting to be assigned. Only Ryan Carter stood there with his chin slightly raised. He looked totally confident, but he was frowning, as if bothered by something. His good friend, Eric Miller, nudged toward the girl standing nearby and whispered, "Dude, that girl from the Summers family is really clinging to you." Ryan looked reluctant, but his tone gave away a hint of pride. "She insisted I stay at her place," he said. Then he suddenly turned toward the girl next to him and said warmly, "Don't worry, Emily. No matter whose house you're assigned to, I'll take care of you." Emily Lane, her hair braided into neat plaits, clutched her bag tightly and said nothing. As the village leader began calling names, Eric went to Derek Brown's house, Steve went to the Johnsons. The number of youths in the square slowly dwindled. My dad finished his smoke, flicked the ashes to the ground, and was about to step forward. I quickly grabbed his sleeve. "Dad, wait." I handed him the crumpled note I had been holding in my palm. "Please give them this. Don't change it." He looked a bit surprised but didn't ask questions. After all, just last night, I had cried and insisted that Ryan Carter was a good student, trustworthy, and I absolutely wanted him to stay at our home. The village team leader took the note, glanced at it, then raised his hand and wrote a line on the chalkboard. "Jason Summers' family takes Emily Lane." Immediately, the villagers around us all turned to look, their eyes full of curiosity and gossip as they stared in my direction, and at Jason. "Why is Emily going to Jason's house? Didn't Sarah cry and make a big scene yesterday, begging for Ryan Carter to live with them? Who knows? Maybe Secretary Summers made the call. That girl never dares talk back to her dad." "Yeah, someone saw her cornering Ryan yesterday, trying to talk to him. Everyone knows she's set on him." Everyone in the village knew. I had gotten into several fights with the village chief's daughter, me, Sarah Summers, just to win the chance for Ryan, the city youth, to stay at our house. Ryan suddenly looked up, his face filled with disbelief. Emily's face also shifted slightly, showing some confusion and displeasure. But the village team leader didn't have time for drama. He looked over the roster. Ryan Carter was the last one left. "Oh, right? Didn't the Smith family just free up their West Wing? Let's send Ryan there." Linda Smith was nearly 50. Her husband had passed away years ago, and she lived in the village office with her only son, who was mentally disabled. Everyone in the village called her Widow Smith. The chattering and gossip buzzed in my ears, but I couldn't focus on any of it. My dad's face darkened immediately. He was just about to scold me, but then seemed to remember his role as village secretary. He couldn't explode in front of everyone, so he just glared at me. "You just don't know how to stop causing trouble. Wait till we get home, then we'll talk." I quickly tugged on his sleeve. "Dad, just this once. I promise I won't be this stubborn again. Never again." He still had work to do and told me to wait by the roadside to head back with Emily and help her carry her things. He had barely taken a few steps. I suddenly heard hurried footsteps behind me. Ryan Carter stormed toward me, fists clenched and face flushed red, clearly fuming. "Sarah," he snapped. "Weren't you just chasing me down a few days ago, insisting I had to stay at your place? What are you trying to pull now?" Eric Miller followed right behind him, wearing the kind of face someone puts on when they think their buddy's been wronged. "Yeah, Sarah? You're switching sides faster than flipping a page? Now you're having Emily stay at your place? What, you think she's soft-spoken so you can push her around on purpose? Ryan suddenly put on a tone like he was being the bigger person. Come on, Sarah. Don't throw a childish tantrum. What, are you thinking if you trick Emily into staying with you, you'll have some power over her? They said Ryan had studied at a county-level high school and would have gone on to college if not for some unfortunate twist of fate. Emily had gone to the same school. I still remembered the day Ryan first came to our village. He was wearing a faded sky blue dress shirt that used to be bright and new. He looked clean and proper, even a little refined. When he spoke, he always lifted his chin slightly. I couldn't take my eyes off him. Ever since then, I'd constantly found excuses to go hang around the youth compound. I always thought he stood out from the rest. But looking back now, all that so-called specialness was just the glow I painted on him in my mind. It was really just my yearning for city life. I was the one who'd made Ryan into something he wasn't. I cut him off right there. Ryan, didn't you always think I was annoying? Now that I don't want you staying at my house anymore, isn't that exactly what you wanted? But I turned to look at Emily, walking toward us, and said firmly, I want Emily to stay at my house. And besides, I added, my dad's the party secretary. The brigade's been crystal clear about taking good care of the city youths. You ever seen a village secretary's daughter openly bully someone in broad daylight? Ryan's face darkened immediately. You'll regret this. I let out a cold laugh. Regret? Who do you think should be regretting something here? Compared to the other city youths, Ryan only brought a single canvas bag with him. I figured it was because he assumed I'd give him some extra things. I remembered how most of his bedding and clothes had already been given to Eric. Now he was probably going to have to go crawling back to get them. Come on, Emily, I said, no longer interested in speaking to Ryan. I grabbed Emily's hand and pulled her away. Maybe I sounded a little harsh, but she followed me without a single word of complaint. As I looked down, I realized I had grabbed her sleeve a bit tightly and quickly let go. Hey, I wasn't taking it out on you, I muttered. Not at all. Before, I really had mocked Emily because of how Ryan treated her coldly, but after everything I'd been through in my last life, I finally understood. He wasn't worth it. It had all been one-sided on my part. Besides, in that past life, I had ended up homeless, dying of cold under a bridge. It was Emily, already back working in the city, who eventually recognized my body and made sure I was properly buried. Emily nodded slowly and looked at me thoughtfully. I knew the path back to my house had to pass by Widow Smith's home. That old mud brick house really was run down, with most of the outer plaster peeled off. In one corner of the yard, there was a pile of half-burned firewood. As we reached the front gate, we saw a scruffy young man squatting on the doorstep. It was Widow Smith's son, Billy. The moment he saw us, especially noticing that we were two girls, he broke into a wide, goofy grin and mumbled, "New wife?" We ignored him. Suddenly, Billy sprang up from the threshold and trotted over to us, nearly pressing his face up to Emily's. "My mom says you're my new wife," he blurted out. "You're gonna be my wife." Emily's face went pale. Instinctively, I pulled her behind me. "Billy, get back here." Widow Smith came rushing out from the house and frantically pulled him back inside. She looked at us with an apologetic smile, nervously explaining, "He's just talking nonsense. Don't mind him, please. Don't mind him." I quickly grabbed Emily's hand and hurried past the courtyard gate, but my heart was pounding with unease. In my past life, Emily had ended up being assigned to this house by the team leader. She had spent 2 years suffering in that drafty, crumbling mud brick house. Later, for reasons no one fully understood, Widow Smith somehow managed to marry her off to her son, Billy. After she got pregnant, she tripped on the doorstep while working and tragically lost the baby. And when she finally got accepted to college, Widow Smith hid the admission letter from her. That's why, in this lifetime, I told my dad to have the brigade leader assign her to live at our house. I had already cleaned up the West Wing room last night. My mom had swept every corner spotless, even knocked down the cobwebs hanging from the beams with a bamboo pole. Knowing Ryan Carter might come, I'd even gone to the roadside to pick some wildflowers, placing them in a ceramic bowl for decoration. something I'd heard educated people found poetic. It was the same room from last time. Back then, the moment Ryan stepped in, his brow had never once relaxed. "This is your spare room?" he asked, eyebrows raised. "Even the firewood sheds in our county town are brighter than this." After that, he constantly brought it up. When I was in town, he'd say, "My desk was solid mahogany. My mom even sent me powdered milk, and I never touched it at the youth camp." His sense of superiority and constant dissatisfaction seeped into everything he said. It always made me feel like my family was letting him down. So I kept trying to give him the best of everything. But now, Emily Lane stood at the doorway. She blinked lightly and said, "Thank you, Sarah. This room is spacious and clean. I really like it. Thank you and your whole family." This was the second time she'd voluntarily spoken to me today. To be honest, I hadn't really liked her before. I always thought she was too reserved, too aloof. Back then, I used to mutter in my head that she was putting on airs, when really, I was just insecure. I hadn't even finished middle school and couldn't recognize half the words in her books. Meanwhile, she could sit there reading Russian. Now, standing face to face with her, I still felt a bit awkward. I quickly put on a stern face and hardened my tone deliberately. "Moving in means you follow our house rules. Meals are at set times, you wash your own clothes, and don't go reading out loud in the yard, you'll disturb the neighbors." I didn't even dare look at her reaction. I spun around and walked straight to the doorway. Emily didn't rest for long after setting her things down. She went straight to the kitchen to help my mom with the housework. My dad returned in the evening, carrying the rations the village had allocated for the city youths. The moment he stepped inside, he asked, "Girl, what are you thinking? You were crying and begging to have Ryan Carter live here just last night, and now you've changed your mind completely?" My mom had asked me the same thing earlier when she saw Emily. I'd practically sworn on my knees. "Dad, I was blind before. Now I realize Ryan's really nothing special." My dad stared at me for a while, still skeptical. After all, just last night I'd been throwing a fit, desperate to have Ryan stay at our place. Now I was acting like nothing happened. Truthfully, I'd long seen through that guy. He was never someone dependable. Even if he stayed here, he wouldn't bring peace to our home. During dinner, maybe because she wanted to welcome Emily properly, my mom gritted her teeth and pulled the fattest hen from the coop. After hearing about my change of heart from Dad, she even muttered, "Only because it's Emily Lane. If it were Ryan Carter, he wouldn't even get an egg. He always said eggs smelled fishy." That's when I realized my parents had never liked Ryan to begin with. They just tolerated him because of me. Now that Emily was here, my mom even made her a sweet egg soup. When she placed the bowl in front of Emily, its golden swirls floated on top. Emily quickly pushed the bowl toward me. "Sarah, you have it. I'm not thirsty." I immediately turned my head away. "Eat your own. That stuff's too sweet. I've had enough of it." After dinner, Emily picked up a bag of grain and said, "Ma'am, this is my ration. Please mix it with the household supply for cooking." My mom didn't stand on ceremony. "Don't worry, Emily," she said with a smile. "We're not stingy folks here. Whatever we eat, you'll eat. You won't go hungry." Emily smiled and nodded, her eyes showing real relief. But that night, I slept terribly. Every time I closed my eyes, memories from my past life came rushing back. Ryan asking my mom for food stamps before returning to the city, Ryan pushing me down the stairs, Ryan cursing me in front of my dad, calling me dead weight, until I finally woke up. My heart was still pounding, and my forehead was covered in cold sweat. I got out of bed immediately and went outside the West Wing, terrified that Ryan Carter might be the one living there. But before I could even touch the door, it opened on its own. Emily Lane stepped out. Her hair was neatly combed, and she was wearing a faded blue cotton jacket that had clearly once been her best. She paused when she saw me, then smiled and narrowed her eyes gently. "Good morning, Sarah." The knot in my chest instantly eased. "Good morning," I replied. "Did you sleep well?" It wasn't until breakfast that I found out Emily had gotten up before dawn. She had even helped my mom prepare breakfast, and if Mom hadn't insisted on sending her back to rest, Emily would have helped with the laundry too. It had only been one night, but I could already tell my mom genuinely liked Emily. Back in my past life, when she was nice to Ryan, it was only because I had begged and begged. But Emily was different. She was truly hardworking. Before sunrise, she had helped fetch water, then washed the dishes after breakfast without being asked. Even when my mom was stitching the soles of shoes, Emily sat nearby, threading needles and passing them along. She had sharp eyes and quick hands. I heard my mom murmuring, "If only this girl were my daughter-in-law, that would be wonderful. Too bad my son's already passed. We only have Sarah left." After breakfast, Emily went to the fields right on time. I followed my dad's arrangements and reported to the brigade office every day to help sort out the records. It was certainly easier than laboring under the sun in the rice fields. The brigade accountant was going to a half-month training at the commune, so before he left, he handed me all the records to organize. Maybe because of what I'd gone through in my last life, I handled the paperwork with surprising ease. Even the complicated production point charts, which most people found difficult, I finished in no time. Suddenly, I remembered that Emily had come to me early that morning, asking for wood ash and some rags. I worried something might have happened, so I hurried to the fields. The city youths were there, pant legs rolled up, bent over, learning how to plant rice seedlings from the old farmers. From far away, I could already hear Leo Wu snickering and elbowing Ryan. "Look, Ryan, Sarah's back again. Didn't I tell you? She can't stay away from you, must have regretted it overnight." Ryan had been bending over, planting seedlings, but at those words he slowly straightened up. He casually rolled up the muddy cuffs of his pants, and even that motion looked overly refined and calculated. In my past life, I would have blushed and rushed up to him, afraid he was tired, clinging to him, even offering to help him fill out his work points. But now, I walked right past him and went straight to Emily, who looked pale. I handed her a water bottle. "Emily, here, I brought your water." At the same time, I heard a sharp, chirping voice from behind. "Emily, Emily." I turned around. Sure enough, it was Susie Summers, the village chief's fourth daughter. Her hair was braided like Emily's, and she was wearing a similar faded blue cotton jacket. I dressed like that once too, trying to mimic Emily, but I never had her grace. Instead, I just looked awkward and mismatched. In my past life, Susie and I had fought more than once over Ryan Carter. He called me clingy and desperate. I cursed him for being delusional. Once, while we were washing clothes by the river, we nearly flipped each other's wash basins into the water. The village chief finally had enough and sent Susie off to help at a shop owned by distant relatives in town just to keep the peace. Now she must have heard Ryan had been assigned to Widow Smith's home, and she glared at me with pure hostility. Then she ran straight over to Ryan. "Ryan, our east wing is empty. It's clean and bright. Want to come stay at our house instead?" Ryan didn't respond to her directly. Instead, he glanced sideways at me, probably thinking I'd followed Susie here just to get jealous. Leo chuckled beside him. "Wow, Ryan, you really got it going on. Sarah just left, and now Susie's chasing after you." Susie blushed at that. "I'm being serious. Our place is way better than Widow Smith's, and my mom makes amazing fried flatbreads." Ryan gave her a warm, polite smile. "Susie, you really don't have to," Ryan Carter said with a performative seriousness as everyone nearby turned to look. Their ears strained toward our direction, no doubt because Susie Summers had been so direct it caught everyone off guard. Trying to keep a straight face, Ryan added, "Housing assignments for the city youths are made by the brigade. As members of the youth support program, we have to follow orders and obey instructions." That's what he said, but his eyes were still drifting toward Susie's face, clearly waiting for her to keep pressing. Susie didn't catch the subtle cues, she just stared up at him with a look of pure admiration. "But you're a scholar. You hold a pen, not a hoe. You shouldn't be doing this kind of rough labor, bending over in the mud. I already told my dad, you should be in the brigade storeroom doing accounting. It's way easier work." The words struck a familiar chord. I'd said the exact same thing to my dad once before. As she spoke, Emily was standing quietly next to Ryan. The sun was high, and his forehead was soaked with sweat, his hair sticking to his skin. But his hands kept working without pause, carefully planting seedlings into the muddy water, his technique steadier than some of the old villagers. Emily straightened up, probably because her legs were going numb from crouching too long. When she noticed I was holding brown sugar water, she gave me a gentle smile, two shallow dimples appearing on her cheeks. Thank you. She truly didn't give Ryan any weight in her eyes. Leo Wu had sidled up without me noticing and teased me. You used to blow up whenever Ryan talked to another girl. Now look at you. I didn't even look up as I helped Emily pour the drink into her bowl. You're wrong about that. There's nothing between me and Ryan Carter. And it was true. There really was nothing. Ryan never wanted to be seen with me in public. He always said it would damage my reputation. Every time he asked to meet, it had to be in secret, usually under the old locust tree by the river, and I had to be the one waiting first. Yet he had no problem accepting the dress shirt I spent months saving fabric coupons to buy for him. He also took the powdered milk my mom had someone bring from the county. But to outsiders, it always looked like I was the one chasing after him. Suddenly, Leo said mockingly, "Sarah, weren't you the one always trying to hang around Ryan Carter?" You really are. Quite the flirt. For a moment I froze, not understanding what he meant. Then I heard Emily's voice behind me. Leo, you're a city youth. We were sent here to support the countryside, not to gossip like old hens. Just mind your own work. Leo was clearly caught off guard. All right, geez, Emily. Then, as if needing to defend himself, he added, You better watch out for Sarah, she's not simple. Last time she almost pushed Susie into the river. She's vicious like that. How dare you twist the truth? I shot up, trembling with rage. It was Susie's basin that fell in. She slipped, that's why she fell, not because of me. Leo hoisted his hoe over his shoulder and walked off. I remembered what happened in my past life. After I became paralyzed, my dad took me to the police. When they summoned Leo for questioning, he claimed he didn't know a thing. The memory left me drained. I slumped down at the edge of the field, overwhelmed with frustration. Don't mind him, Emily said as she walked over and gently patted my shoulder. I kept my head down, saying nothing, eyes stinging. I believe you. I looked up at her sharply. There wasn't even a trace of doubt in her expression. In my entire life, aside from my parents, no one had ever believed in me so firmly. What she said next stunned me even more. Actually, I don't really know Ryan that well. I was taken aback. But, didn't he say he liked you? That you two were close? That you even requested to come here together? After all, in my previous life, Ryan's memoir had sold like wildfire. Its popularity was comparable to Under the Hawthorn Tree. People cried over the story of Ryan Carter and Emily Lane, convinced they had shared a deep, unforgettable love. But now Emily's face turned cold, her eyes full of indifference. There's nothing between me and Ryan Carter. We had arrived on the same truck when we first came to the countryside, just happened to be assigned to the same commune. Emily said all those ambiguous rumors had actually come from Ryan Carter himself. According to her, Ryan told her he barely even spoke to him, no more than he did to the cadre who managed daily point records. He said people were always looking at him with judgmental eyes. And when he found out I had feelings for Ryan, he claimed he finally had an excuse to shake off that girl. Meanwhile, Ryan and Susie were still standing on the edge of the field, chatting away as if nothing else mattered. Mr. Zhang, the old cadre who was in charge of tallying work points, was already frowning. He absolutely hated it when young people wasted time chatting during labor. Ryan, he snapped. If Susie has something to say, let her say it back in the village. Don't be distracting others while they're working. If time's wasted, who do you think pays for it? Susie saw the stern look on Mr. Zhang's face and had no choice but to leave reluctantly. The moment she walked off, Ryan looked over at me, his voice laced with obvious baiting. Sarah, didn't you say you wanted me to help copy down some quotations to post on the wall? I'm free after work today. But we all knew the truth. These fields were being worked by the other city youths, who were actually putting in real effort. Most of the seedlings had been planted by Emily alone, while Ryan just stood nearby, striking a pose. He probably assumed my coldness had just been for show, that all it would take was one kind offer for me to run back to him like before. No need, I said, my voice firm. My mom already asked Mr. Wang, the teacher at the village elementary school. His handwriting is much better than yours. I had just packed up the sugar water flask and was about to head back to the office. Ryan's face froze. Clearly, Susie hadn't been able to convince anyone. Her father, the village chief, was known for being a stickler for rules. He'd never change an assignment just because of his daughter's whining. Ryan was still staying at Widow Smith's house. Every day, when he passed by our courtyard on his way to and from work, he would sometimes slow his pace, clearly hoping I'd come running after him like in the past. But I never did. He probably hadn't experienced the full extent of Widow Smith's stinginess yet. She might seem warm and welcoming on the outside, but she was extremely tight-fisted. Publicly, she'd bring him hot water, but behind his back, she skimped on his rations, even withholding half a bowl. She was a master at putting on a show, always crying poverty in front of brigade leaders, boasting about how much she did for the city youths. In my past life, when Emily had been assigned to live there, packages her family sent, powdered milk, cloth, were all confiscated under the excuse of keeping them safe. By the time Emily found out, the milk powder had already been eaten by Billy, and the fabric had been sewn into clothes for one of Widow Smith's nieces. These stories were all written in Ryan's memoir. Every time he mentioned them, his tone dripped with resentment toward me, as if I were to blame. But now that he was the one suffering through it instead of Emily, maybe he'd stop holding that grudge. About half a month later, early in the morning, chaos suddenly broke out in the cornfield. Ryan had fainted. By the time Emily and I arrived, he had already been carried up to the ridge. His face was pale as paper, lips tinged blue. Leo Wu was pacing in circles beside him, panicking, yelling, "Ryan, come on, man, wake up!" Emily, however, stayed calm. She pulled a small flask from her satchel, her own stash of sugar water, which she hadn't even touched, and gently pried open Ryan's mouth, slowly dripping the liquid in. It was a long while before Ryan finally opened his eyes, his voice so faint it sounded like a mosquito buzzing. "What happened to me?" The brigade doctor, who had just arrived, knelt down and checked him over. "Low blood sugar," he said. "Nothing serious, just hunger. He needs to eat more real food, not just thin porridge all the time." The doctor looked over and asked, "What did you have for breakfast this morning?" Ryan's lips moved weakly. "Just a bowl of vegetable porridge." As soon as he said it, Widow Smith, who had come along to see what was going on, suddenly let out a wail and collapsed to the ground, crying loudly. "Oh, Ryan, if something happens to you, how will I explain it to the village?" She wiped at her eyes with her sleeve and slapped her thigh, wailing, "I've been getting up early every day to cook for you. I even made you eggs the other day. How could you treat it like nothing?" Her voice echoed across the ridge, dramatic and shrill, clearly aimed at clearing her own name in front of the others. Ryan said nothing. He just sat there quietly as someone helped him to the shade of a tree to rest. Obviously, he wouldn't be working today. And with no work, there'd be no points. Leo, being lazy and always trying to game the system, didn't even bother to track his own work points. There was no way he'd care about Ryan's. That afternoon, as I stepped out of the brigade office, I saw Ryan Carter staggering toward me, one step at a time. The sun cast his shadow long across the dirt path. His face no longer carried its usual arrogance, just a weakness he couldn't hide. "Sarah," he said, "can you lend me some ration coupons?" Hearing his voice made my mind reel. I looked at his now dark, sunburned face and those lifeless eyes. The work he was doing now was completely different from we'd lived at my house in my past life. Back then, I'd pestered my dad into letting Ryan move in, and Dad had arranged an easy job for him, handling point records and reading out announcements. All he had to do was stroll down to the brigade office for a couple of hours a day, and he'd still earn full work points. Now, he had to get up before dawn with the villagers, plant rice seedlings bent at the waist, swing a hoe to weed the fields. There was no way to dodge any of it. And compared to the youth housing compound, Widow Smith's place was far worse. At least the youth dorm had a shared kitchen, where you could get a thick porridge for every meal. But everyone knew Widow Smith was notoriously stingy. The cornmeal gruel she served Ryan was so thin, you could see the bottom of the bowl. Forget about white flour, she barely gave him a sliver of pickled vegetables with his food. After 2 weeks of this non-stop work, anyone would be worn down. Worse yet, her mentally challenged son, Billy, often screamed in the middle of the night. Sometimes, he'd even run barefoot to the door of the room where Ryan slept, banging and shouting, "New wife! Open up! I want my new wife!" Ryan's once fair face had turned dark and rough. His hair was a messy tangle stuck to his forehead. He didn't look like a bookish young man at all anymore. But I also remembered how, in my past life, every time Emily came out of Widow Smith's home for work, she was always neat and composed. Her eyes still sparkled. I shook my head. No. I didn't wait for Ryan to say another word. In the past, the moment he showed the slightest sign of needing something, I would rush to hand him my ration coupons without hesitation. He always said he'd borrow them, but he never returned a single one. "If you really can't take it anymore, talk to the team leader. Ask to be reassigned," I said, then turned and walked away without looking back. After that day, I didn't see him again for a while. Widow Smith was too stingy to let go of the extra food Ryan brought in. Every time the team leader asked about him, she'd put on her usual act and say she was treating him like her own son. But the fact that Ryan was fainting now and then, well, the villagers saw that with their own eyes. Just when I thought he'd finally go and ask the team leader to change his living arrangement, something unexpected happened. Susie fell into the river. It was Ryan who jumped in to save her. No one saw how it happened exactly. All anyone knew was that Ryan went in and pulled her out. When Susie was finally carried home by her sobbing mother, Ryan lay passed out on the riverbank, completely still. They said he had used up so much strength saving her that he nearly drowned himself. Susie's father, the village chief, took one look at Ryan unconscious on the ground and then at his own daughter's pale face and immediately made a decision. "Move Ryan Carter to our east wing. Have your mother take good care of him." Just like that, Ryan officially moved out of Widow Smith's place and into the Summers household. Later, as I walked out of the brigade office, I happened to run into Susie's mom carrying a basket home. It was full of brown sugar and eggs. When she saw me, she didn't hesitate to start talking. "If it weren't for Ryan, our Susie might have died. He's such a good boy, so honest. Risked his own life for her. He needs to be well fed now, needs to be taken care of." Leo Wu came over and leaned close to me, waggling his eyebrows. "See, Ryan's still got his tricks. Not only does he get a better place to live, he gets to eat white flour buns every day now." I didn't answer him. I just kept thinking about how pathetic Ryan had looked the last time he begged me for ration coupons. Was that whole thing an act? Was it just a setup to escape the mess of Widow Smith's house? "Don't you think something's off?" I turned and asked Leo. "Ryan couldn't even stand up properly at work, and now he has the strength to jump into a river and save someone?" Leo's face stiffened. "You just can't stand seeing Ryan catch a break, can you?" I didn't reply. I just stared off in the direction of the Summers courtyard, a heaviness settling in my chest. Susie wasn't a bad person, but I couldn't help feeling uneasy. That afternoon, I deliberately walked past the village chief's house and saw Ryan sitting on a stone bench in the courtyard, sunbathing. Susie stood beside him, handing him a cup of water. After a while, Ryan finally got up and went inside to rest. When I pushed open the gate and stepped in, Susie looked over. The smile on her face faded slightly. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I stared into her eyes. "Did you do it on purpose? You've walked that riverbank for over 10 years. How could you suddenly slip on a rock? What are you talking about? Ryan Carter isn't a good person. He's just using this opportunity to move into your house." At that, Susie slammed the enamel mug she was holding down onto the stone table. "So what if that's what he wanted? I let him. Even if he planned it. What does it matter?" I wanted to tell her more, to say what Ryan was really like underneath it all. But just as I opened my mouth, she cut me off. "Sarah, you just can't stand to see me happy." She stood up, her back ramrod straight. "When you were chasing after Ryan, you glared at me for just talking to him. Now that he's staying at my house, you show up every few days just to trash talk him. Stop being so petty." The look in her eyes stunned me into silence. Sometimes people won't believe the truth until they hit rock bottom themselves. I swallowed the words and turned to leave, my chest tight and heavy. "Hey Sarah," Susie suddenly called after me. "Ryan lives at my house now. My dad's the village chief. If Ryan tries anything shady, my dad won't let him off easy." When I got home, Emily noticed my expression immediately. "Did something happen?" she asked. Our relationship had been neither close nor distant lately. We hadn't really talked much about Ryan. But now, after hesitating for a long moment, I finally spoke. What if? What if Ryan and Susie really end up together? The thought made me feel like I'd committed some kind of sin. Susie might be impulsive, but she wasn't a bad person. If she ended up tied to Ryan, there was no telling how much she'd suffer. Emily didn't stop what she was doing, but her voice was calm and soft. Everyone makes their own choices. That's their decision. It has nothing to do with you. It does have something to do with me. I suddenly broke down, my emotions overwhelming me. I sobbed uncontrollably. Emily, if I hadn't changed my mind, Ryan would have stayed at our house. That means you would have been the one assigned to Widow Smith's place. And you would have had such a hard time. Emily froze. Finally, I said the words I'd been carrying from my past life. I'm sorry, Emily. But she shook her head. You're wrong, Sarah. This has nothing to do with you. She suddenly looked up. You didn't do anything to hurt me. You don't owe me an apology. Her words were completely different from what Ryan always said. His voice, his blame still echoed in my mind. If it weren't for you, Emily wouldn't have suffered so much. This is my life, Emily said firmly. She turned to face me, her eyes so bright they caught the sunlight. It was the brigade leader's decision to assign me to Widow Smith's house, and even if living there had been terrible, I wouldn't have given up. I would have earned my points, found a way to study, and waited for a chance to return to the city. I wouldn't just sit around waiting for someone to throw me a lifeline. But Ryan said, I blurted out, catching myself just in time. I'd nearly revealed something from my past life. Ryan Carter only ever thinks about himself, Emily continued. Even if you hadn't changed your mind and he'd stayed at your house, seeing me go to Widow Smith's wouldn't have moved him one bit. He complains non-stop when he's uncomfortable. Do you really think he'd care about someone else's suffering? Her words hit me like thunder. I thought back to everything from my past life. She was right. If Ryan had truly cared about Emily, why hadn't he helped her get out of that place? Why had he enjoyed the comfortable life I gave him while she suffered? It turned out I didn't have to carry the weight of someone else's fate. Emily looked at me, and in her eyes was a clarity so sharp it cut through all the fog in my mind. Just like I'm living here now, you gave me a chance, and I'll walk the rest of the path on my own. Everything in her words, everything between the lines, was full of disdain for Ryan Carter. In his memoir from my past life, Ryan Carter claimed that he and Emily Lane had once had mutual feelings for each other. But maybe that was all just in his head. Ryan was the type of person who loved glorifying himself. Life hadn't gone the way he hoped, so he prettied up the past to make it look better. No one should take a personal memoir like that at face value. But that conversation with Emily the other day opened something inside me, like a locked window swinging wide. That morning, my mom went to the village school to drop off some pickled vegetables and came home saying, Mr. Wang's wife is pregnant. Her legs are swelling badly. He's looking for someone to substitute teach for half a year. The first person who came to mind was Emily. She had a solid academic background, and her handwriting was beautiful. She'd be perfect for it. I mentioned it to my dad, and he went straight to the village chief that same day. The chief knew Emily loved studying and approved it on the spot, saying she could come try out. The interview was set for the next day. On the day of the interview, both the chief and Mr. Wang were thrilled. You're hired. Start teaching in a few days. But today, when I brought Emily to the brigade office to collect her teaching materials, we had barely reached the doorway when we heard Susie's voice from inside. Ryan was wearing a brand new blue khaki jacket with neatly pressed cuffs. He had regained that confident, scholarly glow he always tried to wear. Susie leaned against her dad, speaking sweetly. Daddy, once Ryan finishes teaching, we're going to town to buy wedding clothes. Hurry up, okay? And just like that, it all clicked. Ryan wanted the substitute teacher job too. What shocked me even more was how quickly he and Susie had gotten engaged. I walked straight to the chief's desk. We're here to pick up teaching materials for Miss Lane, I said, voice calm but tight. The chief fiddled with his tobacco pipe and said, Oh, Sarah, about Emily Lane. After further consideration, we found that Ryan Carter might be a better fit for the teaching post. so we won't need Emily for the position after all. My tone rose, unable to help it. But you already agreed. In his memoir, Ryan had written that his greatest regret was missing the chance to be with Emily. And now, he'd gone as far as stealing even this teaching job from her? So much for all that passion and principle. A man's supposed depth collapsed faster than paper in the face of real opportunity. Emily tugged at my sleeve, trying to keep me calm. I caught sight of Susie's smug, triumphant smile and had no choice but to swallow my frustration. After we stepped outside, Ryan caught up with us. Pretending not to know anything, he asked, "Sarah, Emily, you two here for something?" He glanced at Susie beside him. "We're heading to the commune to get fitted for our engagement outfits." His whole posture screamed, "Look at us! Look how well we're doing!" Susie puffed out her chest with pride and shook the red string bracelet on her wrist. "Once we're engaged, we're inviting the whole village to a candy feast. You better come, Sarah." Emily simply said, "Congratulations." After the two of them walked off, arms linked, I muttered in frustration, "Emily, this is ridiculous." But Emily stayed calm. It was enough just to be considered. You can't force something that wasn't meant to be. "That's not it." I stared at the packet of still unopened teaching materials in her arms. My chest tightened. She'd spent all of last night preparing Blackboard content for class, and now, this. I looked into her eyes and suddenly thought of the college entrance exams. "Emily," I said, "give it 6 more months." She looked puzzled. 6 months? I nodded firmly. "Half a year from now, a huge opportunity is coming. Way better than a substitute teacher gig. You'll be able to go wherever you want, stand on any stage you choose." As for Ryan, he was already acting like he'd won the world just by getting this measly teaching job. But when the national exams came back and he realized he was tied down by his engagement to the village chief's daughter, when even applying would require the Sioux family's permission, he'd regret it more than anyone. And sure enough, just 6 months after Ryan and Susie got married, the national college entrance exams were reinstated. As soon as the news broke, the city youths dropped everything and sobbed openly. Even Emily, usually so composed, had red-rimmed eyes. She'd never stopped studying in secret, never gave up. This was the chance they had all been waiting for years. When my parents heard the news, they stayed up all night, rummaging through every trunk and drawer. My parents dug through every trunk in the house, pulling out all the old books they had kept at the bottom of drawers. The next day, they even asked a cousin going to the county market to help buy a few usable prep books. The moment they got home, they shoved them all into Emily's hands. "Emily, don't go to the fields anymore," my mom said. "Starting today, just stay home and study. Sarah will do the chores." I quickly emptied my old wooden chest and cleared a space to make her a temporary desk. But when I brought the box of books over, Emily smiled at me. "Sarah," she said, "don't just help me. Let's study together." I froze for a second and pointed at myself. "Me? You think I can go to college?" I had never even finished middle school. Just recognizing all the words on a page felt like a stretch. I'd never imagined sitting for a college entrance exam. In my last life, I'd been too busy chasing after Ryan Carter. Just to stay close to him, I'd signed up for literacy classes and eventually hoped we'd both take the college exams together. But Ryan only taught me for 2 days before his tone changed. "You're so stupid," he snapped. "Even a pig is smarter than you." "Forget it, Sarah. Just leave this to me. Once I get into college, you'll live the good life with me. You don't need to learn anything." I scratched my head, a little embarrassed. "I'm too old for this, aren't I? I probably can't do it." Emily looked at me and said firmly, "Why not? Didn't the team leader say you're quick and organized? You've been great with the accounting work." I was about to shake my head when my mom walked in with a freshly boiled egg in her hand. "Give it a shot, sweetie. No one in our family has ever gone to college. If both of you make it, I'll go burn incense at the ancestral shrine myself." Her words made my heart pound. My brother passed away early, and I was the only child left. But when Ryan received his admission letter in my last life, it was under the identity of my fiancé. My parents had been thrilled, even whispering about burning incense for our ancestors. Then Ryan took the letter and returned to the city alone. My parents had been so disappointed. If I earned that letter myself, even if it wasn't from the top university, it would still make them proud. So, for the next 40 days, I studied hard with Emily. Even in my dreams, I was reviewing what we had learned. On the day we went to register, I was stunned to spot Ryan in the crowd, Susie right beside him, glaring at us. They said the moment the news came out about the reinstated exams, Ryan locked himself in the East Wing, pulled out his old textbooks, and studied late into the night. The next morning, he told Susie he wanted to focus on exam prep. But the second he said it, Susie exploded. She was 5 months pregnant and furious. "You want to take the exam? So you can leave and never come back, is that it? What about me? What about our baby?" Ryan tried to explain, "If I get into college, I can give you and the baby a better life. I can't stay in this village forever." "Well, I want to stay in this village," Susie shouted. The argument got so loud half the village could hear them. The village chief had to step in. Looking at Susie's red, tear-streaked face, he said, "Ryan, you're part of the Sioux family now. Act like a husband. Susie's pregnant. You can't stress her out." In the end, with Susie's father and 3 brothers watching, Ryan had no choice but to write a formal guarantee, pressed his red thumbprint on it, and swore that once he graduated, he'd bring Susie to live in the city with him. Still, Susie was scared. She kept trying to keep him busy, sending him to fetch water, chop wood. Even sewing repairs had to be done with him sitting beside her, to build marital affection, as she put it. Her 3 older brothers weren't easy to deal with either. Every few days, they came knocking, reminding Ryan exactly whose brother-in-law he was. Ryan had never endured anything like that. "In my past life, at our house, my parents treated him like a guest. He never lifted a finger. He'd sit inside peacefully with his books while I did the chores. But now, if he wanted to crack open a textbook, he had to wait until Susie was napping, sneaking a few pages in like he was committing a crime." So when he saw me filling out the registration form too, his face was full of disbelief. "You're applying to college too?" Ryan asked, disbelief written all over his face. I was carefully writing my name on the registration form. "Yeah," I replied. He looked like he thought I was being ridiculous, putting on that self-important tone of someone who's been through it all. "Sarah, listen to me. College isn't that easy. You need a solid foundation." But I didn't think it was that hard. I handed in my form and gave him a smile. After all, I didn't have a husband or a kid to worry about, and Emily always said I was smart and picked things up fast. By the following April, college admission letters started arriving one after another. The mailman came every day with his heavy bag, calling names the second he reached the brigade office. 7 or 8 of the young volunteers had passed. The day Emily's letter came, the mailman raised his voice deliberately. "Emily Lane, admission letter from Huada University." The entire village went into an uproar. Huada University. The village chief held the envelope with the official school emblem, his hands shaking as he checked it 3 times before finally handing it over. But Ryan never received his letter. Rumor had it he had diarrhea on exam day and actually passed out at the test site. Every day I waited in the office, but my name never came up. Each time I left, disappointment settled deeper in my chest. Once, Ryan even tried to console me. "Sarah, don't take it the wrong way," he said. "I'm just being honest. Someone as dumb as you was never going to pass." I ignored him. Another 5 days went by. That afternoon, while I was helping Emily pack for her trip to Beijing, the mailman suddenly shouted from outside the yard, "Sarah, you got an admission letter from a university in Beijing." "What?" I rushed over, took the envelope, and carefully examined it. It was real. My name was on it, and it was from the same school Emily had once circled for me on a list. It was close to hers. "I got in, Emily! I actually got in!" I cried out. She leaned in for a look, then beamed, even more excited than when she received her own letter. "I told you, Sarah. I knew you could do it." "Thank you," I said, voice thick with emotion. "If you hadn't pulled me into this, if you hadn't taught me how to do the problems, I wouldn't have even understood the textbooks." I had never once imagined I'd make it to college. In my past life, all I'd wanted was to follow Ryan to the city, maybe tag along to college if I could. But now, I was going on my own. Because of Emily. Yet she shook her head. "No, Sarah, you earned this. Every stroke of your name on that letter, you fought for it yourself." The village held a celebration for all the students and young villagers who got into college. Emily and I sat at the long table, listening intently as others shared which schools they'd gotten into. Tuition's completely waived, someone said. We even get a living stipend every month. After graduation, we'll be placed directly into teaching jobs. Several others nodded. Our schools guarantee job placement too. No need to worry about employment. Just then, a commotion erupted from a nearby table. We turned and saw Ryan holding a wine bottle, pointing it at Leo West across the table. "How the hell did you get in?" he shouted. "Leo, you couldn't even do basic trig back in the day. This isn't right, this can't be right." Leo's expression was awkward. "What are you even saying? I was a high schooler. I was supposed to be better than all of you. Why do you get to go to teacher's college? And Sarah, that farm girl, gets to go to Beijing. And I got nothing?" Anyone could hear the bitterness in his voice. There was none of that proud, confident glow he once had when he held his Hwada admission letter in my past life. The team leader shook his head. "He just can't accept it," he muttered to those trying to break up the fight. "It's fine. College exams don't happen just once. Let him try again next time." In the end, Susie, embarrassed, dragged him away, half pulling, half scolding. Emily and I left for Beijing to begin our college life. Days were full, rich, and fulfilling. The shadows of my past life slowly began to fade. I only heard about Ryan again during winter break from my mom. "That Ryan Carter," she sighed, "completely obsessed now. I heard he repeated the test several times. But every time, something happened. Either he got a fever or twisted his ankle. One time he even scored well, but..." The admission letter was never actually delivered to Ryan. Later, we found out that it had been intercepted at the commune's post office by Susie's older brother. Ryan probably suspected the Sue family had something to do with it. He wanted to go back to the city and rely on his parents again, but by then, his younger brother already had a family of his own. There was no room for him in the city anymore. It wasn't until Susie's child could run and jump that the Sue family finally loosened their grip, feeling that he couldn't escape anymore. They allowed him to focus on studying. Ryan eventually managed to get into a decent college, but barely half a year into his studies, someone caught him fooling around with a female student in the library. The Sue brothers stormed his campus. When Ryan adamantly denied everything, Susie's oldest brother broke his leg on the spot. Her third brother went further and reported him for hiding his marital status and attempting to abandon his wife and child. Back then, moral conduct was taken very seriously. When the university received the report, they summoned Ryan immediately and forced him to withdraw. He had no choice but to return home in disgrace. After that, Ryan rarely left the east wing of the Sue family home. He refused to do farm work and grew noticeably plumper within 2 years. His belly bulged under his clothes. One day, after another argument, Susie screamed, "Get the hell out of my house, Ryan Carter! I'm done waiting on a useless waste like you." Later, when Emily and I returned to the village to process some paperwork, we saw Ryan wandering aimlessly near the edge of town, mumbling to himself, "I went to Hwada. I married the leader's daughter." His hair was a mess, his shirt wrinkled and half-tucked, and his once sharp eyes now looked dazed and hollow. He didn't even notice us standing just a few feet away. I stood still for a moment, watching him. The man who once wore ambition like a crown was now reduced to a ghost of his former self. I should have felt vindicated. After all, he had once looked down on me, doubted me, dismissed me. But there was no triumph in my chest, just a quiet, bitter calm. Emily squeezed my hand. "Let's go," she said gently, not even sparing him a second glance. Back in the city, life moved on. Emily thrived in her field of psychology, and I found joy teaching children, something I never imagined I'd be capable of in my past life. We shared an apartment near the university, filled with books, sunlight, and the soft scent of fresh tea. Some weekends we would sit on the balcony, talk about the old days and laugh, not in mockery, but in peace. Ryan faded into a memory, a symbol of a version of myself that no longer existed. I didn't hate him. I didn't pity him either. He made his choices, just as I finally learned to make mine. Sometimes it takes a lifetime to find yourself. And sometimes, if you're lucky like I was, you get a second chance to start over. This time I lived not for someone else's approval, not to chase after borrowed dreams, but for the girl who once thought she wasn't enough. For me.